Do you like the north of England? Would you like to spend a couple of days doing nothing but playing board games, eating great food, in the presence of fantastic people, some well-known faces from board game media, and potentially Matthew Jude smelling great? Then come to AireCon between the 13th to 15th of March next year. Tickets and more information are available on their website. That's airecon.co.uk and also in the links in the show notes. And now, on with the show. Welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for October. Now, there's things you can explain, there's things that you can't explain, and some of the things that you can explain come from the mind and some of them come from the spirit, and you've got to wonder whether there's an all-wonderful, powerful thing that is guiding you either slowly or ever quickly. So we can either move spirit fast or we can move at Godspeed. So yes. Joining me to talk about a certain game on Kickstarter, which comes under the name of Godspeed, which is doing slightly well on Kickstarter, I must be saying. There's a panda, there's a saurus, there's some games involved. It's Pandasaurus games. I've got Adam Hill. Clayton Hargrave isn't here, but he's going to be on at another time. But hello, Adam. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing well. Clayton's with us in spirit.
He is.
Oh, he is. I'll channel my inner Clayton Hargrave throughout this interview so that we're both represented. But today you get me in person.
Can you do an impression of Clayton at all? And would he appreciate it if you tried to do an impression of Clayton?
Oh, man. I think the answer to both of those is no. I could try. It would be something like, Adam, we should do this to the game. And don't worry that it breaks everything. It's going to be super fun. That would be Clayton. And I would say, well, of course it's going to be fun, but like you said, it breaks everything. And then he would say, but what if you could? And then like 2 weeks later and 4 arguments later and a couple of apologetic phone calls, we'd get back together and we'd figure it out. But, something like that.
It's sounds like a strong kind of working relationship. Have you known each other long then?
Yeah, Clayton and I have known each other for probably about 6 or 7 years. Wow. And I was teaching at a university where Clayton was attending. And we kind of got to know each other kind of his last year. His senior year there. And then when he graduated, somehow or another, we started running in similar circles. And then we started hanging out and playing games together. And after, a few years, we decided maybe we should try and make a game. And so we decided to try our hand at game design. And the end result of that effort is our first game, Godspeed.
It's not bad considering. I mean, let's do a rewinding over back to, a little bit further back than when you've kind of first met. I mean, currently the Kickstarter is almost at $175,000.
Yeah, it's doing really well.
Now, I'm going to say that slowly, Adam. $175,000. How does that make you feel just now?
It's crazy. It's unbelievable. It's amazing. Clayton and I are just ecstatic. We kind of can't believe this is our game. And, when we made it, of course we like what we made because we're a little biased. But we knew we had something. And to watch so many people support it and give of their own livelihood so that they can experience the game too. Man, it is so humbling is the word.
Yeah.
It's just sort of, it feels great. It's definitely an affirmation. And at the same time, we're just so thankful, that people are willing to play it, that it has really turned into the game that we always, that I dreamed it could be for sure. And then, we're just super thankful to be working with Pandasaurus, and they've done so much, to support the game, to make it better, to do what they can to they've just made an excellent product out of it. And we're just super thankful to be with them, to be with, the folks that we're working with. It's just all come together and we're blown away.
Was it, you always been kicking about the kind of the cardboard? I mean, when you were a younger man, I mean, was it something that you were involved in? I mean, was it something you would do as a family, or was it something that you kind of started out kind of doing yourself with your friends and stuff?
I guess my family, we played, we would play some games together, we would fight over the Monopoly board, just like most families, but, I always kind of liked them more than everyone else in my family. My brother to this day doesn't play board games, which is great to have a brother who's a game designer. For him, he really enjoys that. Our conversations go really well. So what are you doing? Well, I made this game. Okay, great. What else? And so we laugh about that. I don't know. I really loved it, and probably I grew because I really learned to love Risk and kind of more involved games, a little heavier games. When I was probably 10, we picked up a copy of Axis and Allies at a garage sale.
Yeah.
And that game became the game that I always wanted to play and no one wanted to play with me. So I would play all the sides. And so I kind of grew up as a board game nerd. Clayton, on the other hand, grew up as a video game nerd. And I played a few video games, but he was all in on video games, and kind of came to gaming late. In some ways I helped with some of that. But probably the first game to open up my eyes beyond those standard games that people play, of course, Dungeons and Dragons. Played a lot of that in high school and through college. And while I had played Catan, the one that really opened my eyes to some of the cooler possibilities of board games was actually Dominion. And Dominion, I had never seen a game with that kind of flexibility and that kind of scope. And at the same time, its elegance, the simple choice that you make with regard to what you're going to buy and what you're going to play as your action card. It just, I don't know, all of that clicked as a system, and I thought, this is amazing. And then that sort of opened the door for me to explore other games.
Yeah. Dominion's like a cheeseburger at McDonald's.
I'm listening.
And I'm sure you remember the first time you went to McDonald's and had a cheeseburger. And it was probably one of the finest days of your life. You probably had a Coke with it. You had some fries. You had had one of those fluffy donuts afterwards. You were loving that cheeseburger. Okay?
Well, yeah, hold on. Time out. Your McDonald's have donuts?
Yeah, we used to. Yeah, we still do. Yeah.
Man, our McDonald's don't have donuts.
It's not like a bear claw or a powdered one or anything like that. I mean, you're not talking like that. You're talking like, you used to have like little donuts. I mean, nowadays it's not. It's all kind of like fruit and stuff. But back in the day, they had these lovely kind of 4-inch across, like fluffiest donuts that, they just used to capture them down from the clouds and cover them in a little bit of sugar.
We never had those, but that's awesome. Box, right? I'm so thankful that you got to have them.
You go. I can send you a picture of one. But the thing with cheeseburger is then 2 years down the line, you go off having a cheeseburger because cheeseburger's just a cheeseburger. And Dominion's very, very much like that.
Oh, yeah.
The first couple of times you play Dominion, it's absolutely fantastic, but then it's one of these games I think that kind of gets put to the side. It's really funny, if I mention Dominion to people, a lot of folk will say, yeah, Dominion, it's just brilliant. But most people are likely to lead with like Catan or Carcassonne or something like that. But there's still a lot of people that use Dominion as kind of like the stepping stone into the bigger games, because it brought in some really, really interesting deck builder type mechanics that,
right,
chalk and cheese beside, I mean, it makes Catan like your fries, without any salt. they've been sitting there for half an hour, they're cold, kind of thing. Dominion was kind of like as a game that kind of keeps on kind of giving.
Sure.
Do you, when you jump on, when you get on the cardboard train, okay,
mm-hmm.
Were you through with college? I mean, were you kind of were you still at college at the time, or had you moved into kind of like a professional career? I mean, what was it you did at college, first of all?
At college, I studied, and my undergraduate degree is in history, world history.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and did graduate studies in religion and theology. And I am just about to finish up my doctorate in religious studies and theology.
So are you specializing in a particular area in terms of theology? Because it sounds like it's a big.
It is.
I mean, that's a big.
It is a big area. But I do Christian theology.
All right. Okay. Okay. So do you have to like turn in like a normal kind of doctorate? Do you not have to turn in like your own paper?
I have a dissertation. I'm actually working on it. It's
really?
I'm finishing it as of November 15th. And so it is almost finished.
So you decide to put out a Kickstarter that's getting $175,000, and at the same time you're in the middle of finishing off something which allows you to be Dr. Adam Hill.
Right. All of my friends at school and all of my peers and coworkers are publishing books, and I am publishing a board game because that's more my speed, I think.
So are you walking in when you walk in and see your friends and meet your friends, are you kind of walking in, like at the end of Jump Street when they come out of the limo and there's doves flying and stuff like that, and you got the, is it more like Face Off? You're kind of like Nicolas Cage, John Travolta type thing with doves flying in the background, and you're like got your board game under your arm, and you're going to go, nice book you're writing there.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, Adam, we know about the board game. We know, okay.
I think they just look at me and have a little bit of pity.
Right.
I think that I'm at the kids' table, but that's fine. That's probably where I belong. I'm okay with that.
It's the $175,000 kids' table, though, isn't it?
The kids' table is much nicer than their
kids'
table.
table's a more expensive table. You can't afford to sit at my table.
That's
and
right.
let's face it, it's going to probably not sit about that level. It's probably going to go up a little bit more. You need T-shirts.
Oh, hey,
I'm in the 200k board game club. That's where you need to be. That's what you kind of need to be doing. And here's it, because this is does your beliefs form the type of games that you like to design, or do they have any type of kind of decisions in terms of the games that you would have in your collection as well? I mean, I guess there's a difference between somebody who goes in and studies religion in a kind of an educational format, and somebody who obviously very much believes kind of thing, and they won't allow, I'm not going to have that at my table kind of thing. But has it ever kind of helped your decisions of your board games? Are there board games that you wouldn't necessarily want to play, or are there games that, or were you just kind of like, well, it's a board game, it's just like, it's fun, it's educational? I mean, that's
right.
You separate kind of things like that.
Well, I myself am a believer, and I believe very strongly in my faith. However, in terms of making games and how I approach gaming, it's important that I don't know, folks realize that there are people who are people of belief, but at the same time have great bandwidth for imagination, creativity, and for the opportunity to let games be a medium whereby we can build relationships on mutual respect and all kinds of appreciation for differences and all kinds of diversity. And so while everything that I do is informed by my faith, it doesn't necessarily become the way that I call board games, or the way that and it's never going to become the way that I call people. Or anything like that. Like I don't believe that my faith in any way, I don't believe that I honor God by excluding others and by holding people back and hurting them. I don't tell God that I love God by not loving humans around me.
Yeah.
And so I find my faith to help me be more inclusive of people and to help me be more affirming for people. And there are those of us who are Christians out there that's more of our position. Even though what we hold is very dear to us, it's not a way to exclude others, but rather it's a way to include others. And so does it change the way that I make games? I don't know that necessarily by itself does much in terms of how I make games. I believe, of course, games become a way to express something about the way you think the world is or something like that. But I don't know that it goes that deeply for me all the time that I'm trying to write, for instance, a theological dissertation in a game like Godspeed. And, even to that end, it's kind of funny because that's not our title. When we pitched the game to Pandasaurus, it ended up getting a retheme. And Godspeed, which sounds like a very kind of theologian sort of title, as a take on sci-fi, was not our original idea. And so it is a retheme that we've embraced and we love, but it has very little to do with my own faith convictions or anything like that. That's not where this game is coming from. This game is just fun science fiction and a good exploration with imagination and imagining what an alternate space race could look like. And that's kind of where we're coming from as far as making this game. And it's not so much a statement of belief or creed or anything like that.
I mean, obviously, I have severe issues with you when you put something like Wizards for Hire out there. This is where I was building to. You think I was going somewhere else? That's where I'm building up to, yeah?
I mean,
this bit before, I can let you go through with this, but you know this.
I love that you know about this game. This is a prototype game that I made and that no one has signed yet. But if any publishers are interested. No.
I would say I'd have strong opinions about any publishers allowing more wizards out there for hire, and especially giving them money.
Well,
anyway.
They have to earn it, but see, they have to give it to their own employees so that they can, anyway, yes, that game is there, but Richard, I am willing to let you retheme that game. If you would like to retheme it, I will see what I can do.
If you send me the rules, okay, I will have it rethemed for you within 2 weeks' time.
That sounds great, because I want to make sure that we're not wizards.
Well, I mean, why does it have to? Why can't it be, I mean, you're discriminating here. I mean, is this all you're doing? You're just allowing people who are wizards to get jobs? There's laws about this, Adam. I have issues.
They work. See, here's the premise. The premise of Wizards for Hire is that.
And now you're going to pitch at me.
Yeah, here's the pitch. So the premise of Wizards for Hire is that wizards are awesome and they change the shape of history and they go and fight off whatever in the world needs to be fought off. They go on these epic adventures, but that's not you. You are a 9-to-5er. You work at the local magic shop filling customers' orders for spells like summon coffee, and summon burrito. Or whatever. And, you're just trying to pay the bills. You're not looking to go on wild adventures. You just really want to win Employee of the Month at Ye Olde Magic Shop. All right. So that's the funny premise, but it's a contract fulfillment game that involves worker placement.
Do any of the wizards get hurt? I mean, is there a chance they get burnt on their coffee, or they trip up, or they humiliate themselves?
No, but your staff members can be fired. Because sometimes your apprentice likes to help you fulfill orders, but he does some shoddy work in the shoddy work closet, and he gets caught. And then when he gets caught, he gets fired.
See, I think that's fair. I mean, I think that's a good, sound mechanic, and I'm surprised that Pandasaurus haven't looked on this game and decided that this is the next way forward, especially after you've done $175,000. We're not going to let that kind of go. Have you always been a designer boy? I mean, as in a designer boy. There you go. Have you always been a designer boy?
That's right. The comma is very important in that sentence.
The comma is very, very important in that thing. But have you always been a doodler? I mean, are you the guy that if I looked at your notes for essays that you did in college. There'd be little kind of pictures and drawings and scribbles. You'd be the guy that you'd have little grids of squares everywhere, or triangles or circles and stuff like that. Were you always kind of, focused on the moment, but also at the same time had kind of boundless mental energy, which meant that you were always kind of thinking about other things?
Well, I'm kind of laser focused.
Right.
And so I didn't doodle a lot. I'm extraordinarily analytical. And so I always wanted to find out how things worked and to make them work. And so in a lot of ways, when it comes to our design team, Clayton really does a whole lot more of the, narrative, fun, thematic, what if kind of stuff. And he it's not that he can't do mechanics. He does really creative mechanics. Whereas I tend to think in terms of nuts and bolts. How can I make this work? How can we make the impossible possible in a board game? And how can we solve the problem in front of us and make it not work, but make it fun? How can we hide that people are doing math? How can we get around this set of obstacles that we've given ourselves, these constraints that we've placed ourselves within? And I love that kind of challenge. And so I'm, kind of to use some terms that are a little antiquated, I'm more of the left-brained sort of approach, and Clayton's more of the right-brained approach. And so we make a really good team because we really do come at things from pretty opposite directions and with different kinds of filters and the way that we process information. But it really ends up having us create the games that we make are, I think, stronger for it. Because we both have such a different approach. But I was not so much the doodler. I was the kid who was absolutely taking the notes, who had it, but I was also the kid that once I wrote it down, I didn't have to look at it again. So always kind of remembered things really well and just tried my best to organize everything.
So is the way that you and Clayton work then is you'll look at the same problem and you'll say, well, look, if you manage or limit this resource, then this will cause this cascade thing. And Clayton will say, and the reason that we're doing this is because if we have too many fuel cells, then there's a chance we increase the chance that there's going to be an accident or an explosion. So he very kind of taking the imaginative approach, and you're kind of taking the very kind of, this is the mechanics, and he's saying, well, this is why it's going to kind of work in the kind of the game itself. Yeah. Right.
And so we both use those to our strengths. And, some of my favorite design sessions, because we meet every week, to do design work. And as we're doing that, some of my favorite sessions, our favorite sessions are when we start with, okay, so this is the problem we left off with last week. What did you come up with? And here's what I came up with, and putting those both on the table and seeing what we like better and what works best and what can accomplish our goals and how do we blend some of the best parts of both things. If that's possible, like that's our bread and butter spot where, we're doing our best work, because of those differences.
And did you have a couple of games kind of under the belt before you decided you were going to go out and pitch to people?
No, we had Godspeed. It was our first game. And you're going to love the theme that we originally had.
I want to hear. If it's Wizards related, I'm ending the call. I'm telling you right now.
Okay, it absolutely isn't. However, you may still end the call. Here you go. The original idea was that the game was called Alpacalypse, and it had to do with alpaca. The end of human civilization had happened, and there were these tribes of alpaca that had risen up and were going to be the new dominant species on Earth. And you were leading a tribe of alpaca to become the most influential influential tribe of alpaca in this new alpacan age.
What was it called?
The Alpacalypse. So yeah, a retheme was probably a good idea.
I don't know. I think they might have misstepped here.
No, see, here's the deal. It's awesome as a name and as a theme until you realize 10 minutes into the game that you've got 90 more minutes of alpaca puns. And then it's a little much. And so maybe for this game it doesn't fit, but there should definitely be a game called Alpacalypse.
Is there going to be a smaller kind of party game?
That's
do you have a?
That's what needs to happen with that. And right now we're not working on that, but soon I will be. But Godspeed, as it came to be, was our first game. We are working on another one together right now. And I don't foresee a future where we're not working on a game together. I do a couple by myself every now and then just because, I have a little more time and I choose to spend more of my time doing that particular thing. And so I have a couple of games that I designed by myself, but, Clayton and I have a second one we're working on, that some publishers are looking at right now.
And that's kind of veiled and giving up as little information as possible, Mr. Hill. What is that all about? I'm sure that's fine. Did you pitch to quite a few people before you landed with Godspeed, or did you just rock up to Pandasaurus and said, "Hi, they got a game," and they said, "Phew, as long as it's not an alpaca one, we'll sign it on the spot." And you were like, "Okay, give me 5 minutes." out with the black marker.
Exactly. No, we here's what we did. We went to Unpub 2 years ago. Unpub is a massive convention for a bunch of game designers, and we all bring unpublished games, and they invite the public in to do public playtesting. And it's in Baltimore, Maryland. There are many Unpubs all over, but the main one is in Baltimore. And so we took our game there and we had it on the table, and you put up your little sign that says, here's the name of the game, here's how long it takes, here's how many players. And so in a room full of games that were 30-minute, 20-minute party games and light games, and there were a few heavier ones, but here's ours that's like 90 minutes. And it's a midweight Euro for sure. And so we brought it there, and a few publishers took a look at it, 2 or 3. And we kind of had a short list that we wanted to show it to. And then, of those, our real hope was that Pandasaurus would take it. While there, John Gilmore, who, he develops games and scouts games for Pandasaurus. And John is one of the best people on earth. And he was there and he saw it, and it was funny because we're super nervous. This is our first time pitching a game. John is looking at it, and he, of course is kind of sussing out what's unique about it, what's special about it, what's good. And he looks at us and he goes, "This is the stupidest theme I've ever heard." And we both kind of looked at each other like, well, we tried. Then he said, "I'm interested in taking a copy."
Wow.
And so, our top choice was Pandasaurus, and they said yes at that point to look at it further. They looked at it, and then of course they, did end up making the decision to sign the game. And it was probably, several months later that, we were on a conference call, and they said, "Okay, look, here's what we're hearing. People expect something out of a game called Alpacalypse that this game doesn't deliver. But this game is really good with a different theme."
What were they expecting?
I have no idea, but I know it wasn't a chunky midweight Euro.
I was expecting a llama. Can we have other ungulates involved in? I was expecting an impala kind of thing.
Exactly. But I don't know what they were expecting, but it wasn't what we made. And so Nathan proposed a switch to this kind of retro futurism. This kind of 60s, 70s space race theme, but in an alternate universe, where things like the European Union existed in a germ form already, but may not include the countries you think. We'll see what comes out in stretch goals. There's another little teaser. But that includes some other stories, so that there are other players in the space race and not just US, USSR. But that there's more to it than that, and there's some other things going on. And that creative space, that kind of, 2001 Space Odyssey, that sort of, Philip K. Dick, sort of retrofuturism really just it resonated with both Clayton and myself, so much that we were sort of like, absolutely, what a perfect fit. And that retheme really unlocked some things mechanically and thematically to really make the game even more special. And all in all, it's definitely a better game because of that retheme and because of the development work that then John was able to guide us through, to tweak that game and really make it stronger in light of its theme.
Did you must have had a completely different colour palette, because for me, the colour palette on this is extraordinary. As in, it's the kind of the pinks and the greens, and it's like, it reminds me of when you see an unusual indie video game, and they've decided to do something with a completely different with a colour palette. They've broken the colour system and it's kind of changed something completely different. Did you have a lot of input once they'd taken that over? Did they come back to you and say, right, okay, this is what we're thinking about the colour? And how many times in secret did you say to Clayton, what are they doing with my baby?
When Jesse Riggle was signed on as our artist, and we got to see the first kind of versions of the stuff that he was making for this game, we were absolutely floored with how beautiful it was. Because, our prototype, we had done, your standard stuff. Here's red, here's blue, here's green, here's yellow. Play as your player color and do your thing. And Jesse brought so much life to this game by its palette, just by making those choices artistically. It was so good. We were just shocked that our game could be so beautiful. Because, I play a lot of midweight and heavyweight Euros. And this is a really awesome time to be making those, because they've just, it seems, in the last couple of years, really started caring what they look like. And so, the art has gotten so much better. From just basic, here's a bunch of earth tones that, the folks that are colorblind will never be able to make the differences out of. And my son's colorblind. And so, I'm used to being able to say, hey, bud, you want to play this game? And him saying, I can't tell the difference between some of these pieces. But to see the differences that are coming up artistically for medium weight, heavyweight board games, it's just an awesome time to be one of those players, because we get to enjoy this. And when Jesse came out with his vision for this game, it was so amazing. And we were so thrilled with it. And so we just can't believe that this is our game. We haven't had those moments where we said, what are you doing to our baby? We've had those moments where we said, oh my gosh, our baby is actually beautiful. And so we've just been kind of blown away, that our game could look as good as they've made it look. And Steve-O Torres, makes such amazing graphic design choices in this game that we're just blown away. He did such a good job making this look the part. So we're just so thrilled with the art team and how much they've done to make this game have its visual appeal. And the details are just insane, from the way that you can see the map on the astronaut that's on the box. The cover of his helmet is actually the game board in reflection. The little details there, the way that the backs of the cards on their piles match the surface of the planet below them, so that it gives almost a 3D topographical feel to the map. They've done such a great job with this, that we just sit and look at it and we're just stunned.
And of course, you're far enough away from the process that it's not like when you go down the self-published route in Kickstarter, where you're engaging with the artists and you're making the decisions.
Right.
It is a case that you're getting the kind of the surprises as everybody else kind of gets the surprises. And I'm guessing that the other thing is, am I guessing right in saying you've probably never played you'll have not played a full production version of your own game that you've designed and developed yet, have you?
We did a playthrough of one of the pre-production copies that we ordered for reviewers. We did one playthrough of that a couple weeks ago in the first week of our Kickstarter. And that was the first time that Clayton and I had ever played Godspeed, and not the Alpacalypse, because all through playtesting, John Gilmore led all of his playtesting groups, and our playtesters were so amazing. So if any of them are listening, y'all are awesome, and you helped make this game great. But those groups all played Alpacalypse. And so even some of them were like, oh man, I liked the alpaca theme. But so they were even surprised that, oh yeah, this is that game you played. And so, we just got to play it for the first time 2 weeks ago, in a pre-production copy, but we've not yet played the final version, and it just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're not even thinking kind of stretch goals and stuff like that when you first get signed, are you? Because Pandasaurus, they've got a dual route of doing stuff. Some of the stuff that they do, they'll actually get it printed and get it published.
Right.
And then other stuff they will kind of take. So, say for instance, Wasteland Express Delivery Service. That was
retail.
That was a published.
Yep.
That was a published game. And the Machikoro Legacy game, that seems to be a retail one as well.
Right.
But then you've got like Dead Man's Cabal. With Dan Newman's game.
Yeah. And that's a good game. When I got to play that when I was a backer, and I'm a huge fan of Daniel's and I love his games. And he's got a couple more coming out in the next couple of years that I like even more than Dead Man's Cabal, and I like Dead Man's Cabal. So I look forward to seeing what he's doing. But yeah, they choose to do that sometimes. And actually those, the guys who made, Wasteland Express Delivery Service, Ben Pinchback, Matt Riddle, worked with John Gilmore on that game, and they both live here in Detroit area as well.
Cool.
Ben Pinchback and Matt Riddle do, and they're really good friends of ours, and they were able to give us we were first-time designers, and they gave us a lot of good advice and a lot of feedback and a lot of just direction as we were doing some stuff early on, as designers, and they've been invaluable as friends and kind of, peers in this design thing, although they have dozens of games, and we now have one game. But they've been super awesome to work with. But all of those folks, and it's interesting because when we were first talking to Pandasaurus, there was some discussion. Is this going to be a retail game? Is this going to be a Kickstarter? And I think what we saw was the potential for this really good game to kind of get this blinged out makeover through stretch goals and add-ons. If people wanted that version of the game, that kind of Dinosaur Island chromed out version, then it's there and they can have that because there's such a good opportunity for it. And so, this game can be what the consumer wants it to be. If they don't need all of that stuff, great. The base game is awesome and beautiful and wonderful. If they want more of that stuff, they can add it on. They can get that stuff and it's there. And some of the pieces that are coming out, the pre-production stuff just looks amazing.
I mean, you must be looking at stuff and going, this is just beyond my wildest,
absolutely,
dreams of where it could be. Because I guess a retail version, you have to cut your cloth, you have to cut your cloth to the budget that you've got, basically. And so I've seen retail versions of games that have come out and you're like, yeah, they're good. They're good at what they are, and the production values can be either great or they can be kind of middling to the road where, they've tried to get as many copies out there as much as possible. Mm-hmm. But you're now in this situation where you're not only going to get your game, you're going to get the very best version of the game that you could imagine kind of out there as well. And that must be exciting.
It is exciting. And I mean, when we did our playthrough, we were using the base game, the retail version, kind of those files, and so cardboard pieces, things like that. And it was still just so well made. And so, I think that consumers are going to be really happy. Gamers are going to be really happy with the game that's in the box. Whichever version of that they chose to back and support and pick up. Yeah. I think they're going to be really pleased because the quality really is great. And I think that, we were kind of blessed to be able to follow in the footsteps of Dinosaur Island, because Pandasaurus learned so much in that massive hit, where, they had to make way more copies of that game than they're probably going to make of our game. But all of that experience gets to go into our box, and so they're not exploring this territory. They are good at this territory now. And they've learned some lessons and they've learned how to do things really well. And we are the beneficiaries of that experience. And so that's super fun to watch as our game just gets better and better, because of their work. Yeah.
One of the only thing that ever scares me about Euros is, and I'm going to use an analogy, is for me, a lot of Euros can sometimes be, you're sitting on a train you're one of the passengers along with all the other players who are also passengers. You're all going to go to the same destination, and it's only once you get to the final station that you know who's the winner. So in a lot of Euro games, there's very little kind of player interaction. You're all involved in the same engine, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But on the other side of it, the decisions, you don't know the final decisions until you tot up the scores at the end. Were you conscious of that when you were putting together kind of Godspeed, making sure that, yes, we were taking the kind of the Euro and worker placement kind of sensibilities, but we were trying to make it kind of more kind of interactive? Is that something that you've kind of taken into consideration?
Yeah, and that's where having Clayton really helped, because my wheelhouse, the game that I've always wanted to make, is Godspeed, because I play midweight, heavyweight Euros, and that's my wheelhouse as far as gaming is concerned. Yeah. Clayton's wheelhouse is cooperative, thematic. And so he loves Spirit Island. He loves, the co-op games. I think his gaming group did Pandemic Legacy all the way through it, and they love that sort of co-op thing and the interactive thing with a ton of theme. Well, when we got together, we were able to introduce, and he probably introduced most of the interactive stuff, and made that so strong in that regard. Now, the game itself provides more interaction than your standard Euro, because we did take some fresh looks at what worker placement could be. And we're still exploring that, and that still excites me because that's my favorite medium to work in as a designer. And so, when we talked about it, it's worker placement, not just in the action phase of the game, but also in the whole game itself. So, for instance, when you start the phase, every round has the following phases. It has what's called a high council phase. It's got a supply depot phase, and then it's got the action phase. And basically, you have a team of 5 workers, and they're all specialized. And so your captain can only do military and security actions, whereas your engineer can only do infrastructure actions and building actions, whereas your trader, that's Trader, can only do the finance and commerce actions, and your biologist can only do your research and exploration actions. And so then you have your ambassador that is kind of your leader, and they can only do the diplomacy actions and the ambassador actions. There is no wild card worker. There is no worker that can do anything. Well, so you go into the high council phase, the first phase of a turn, and there's an event that has taken place that requires one of your team members. And so it may say, hey, send your biologist. We have to go and do some research together about this planet we're on. And so you can choose whether or not you send your biologist. Well, if you send your biologist, then that worker is used for this turn, for this round. Yeah. And so you are saying no to taking biologist actions in the action phase. Well, then you get the supply depot phase, and there's like a market, and players have an auction. And so there's a blind bidding auction. So this is more of that player interaction business where what I do directly affects you and what you do directly affects me. Each of your 5 workers has an influence value. Your ambassador is always worth 7, but the other 4 people on your team are worth some combination of the numbers 4, 3, 3, and 2. So, but it's not the same. Each team is variable. And so, for instance, my captain may be my 4, whereas your biologist might be your 4. My trader might be your 2, but your captain might be a 3. So when we choose which workers we're sending to the supply depot, you're bidding that number. So if I were to send my ambassador who is a 7 and my trader who is a 2, I'm bidding 9. Well, you are going to bid, and you may send 3 of your workers, but it may be your 4, your 3, and your 3, and so you've sent 10. And so you would win the bid and get to choose the first thing from the supply depot, and then I would get to choose second. And then if you're the winner of the bid, you get to take the thing that's left over. Yeah. And one of the things in the supply market is also the first player token for the action phase. Oh, okay. So that's where you can decide if you want to go first. And then when you get to the action phase, you get 2 actions. And it's the 2 that you've saved back, of your workers. Or maybe you only sent one to the supply depot, so you have 3 workers back.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't respond to the High Council, so you have 4, so your choices are wide open. But then when you go to take your actions in the action phase, you may get blocked by other players. So if 3 players kept their biologist and there's only 2 spaces where the biologist can go, you might get blocked out. And in that case, you kind of have to take the bailout action, which is the scrapyard, where anyone can go and you get 1 resource. So it's worker placement, but not simply in the action phase. The whole thing is a series of worker placement choices that are very interactive, especially in that supply depot phase. Yeah. Because you are directly interacting with other players and other agencies. Because it's supposed to feel like these agencies are in competition on this new planet, trying to build their machinery and their infrastructure and their civilization up so that they can be a dominant influence on this new planet.
It kind of sounds an awful lot like my bag, to be honest. I've been bursting my way through kind of like Dinogenics recently, and which really, really pleasantly surprised me, and getting back into like Dinosaur Island and there. I'm a big viticulture fan and everything like that, so anything that is, but something that can be a bit crunchy sometimes as well. But it sounds like there's an awful lot of kind of game there. I mean, what kind of game length? You said you listen 90 minutes, so is that 90 minutes all in, or is that like, 25 minutes a player, or what are you looking at?
It's probably right around there, 25 a player. If it's your first time playing and there's 2 of you, think about an hour.
Yeah.
If it's your 4th time playing and there's 2 of you, think about 40 to 45 minutes. If there's 4 of you and it's your first time playing, maybe 2 hours. But if there's 4 of you and it's your 3rd time playing, then you're looking at 90 minutes. And for instance, Tantrum House did a 4-player playthrough, just last week, and it was 90 minutes on the nose. And they even stopped and talked about some things and had some technical issues. But one of the cool things about it is there's not a lot of downtime. Because I take an action, then you take an action, then you take an action, then you take an action, then I take an action. It moves very quickly in all of its phases, so there's not much downtime, whereas I'm used to Euros that like, okay, I've taken my turn, so now you're going to take your 15-minute turn. Exactly. And then that person's going to take their 15-minute turn, then she'll take her 15-minute turn, and then I'll come back after I've had my sandwich and be able to take my next turn.
Exactly.
But this game moves very quickly, and so decisions come quickly, and there's not a lot of downtime. You don't feel bored while you're sitting there, and it's not just fun during your turn. So we really worked hard to make that the case with this game, and part of that, like I said, goes back to Clayton and his particular preferences as a gamer and what he loves to see in games and feel, even in Euros. He wants it to be the same. He wants to be just as interactive with the game when it's not his turn. That became part of what we were doing in Godspeed. And so while people have seen worker placement, while people have seen blind bidding, while people have seen the kind of game that this is, they've never seen it combined like this, I don't think. We never have. I shouldn't say what they have. I should say we've never seen it combined in just this way. And I do think that it's going to be right in a lot of people's wheelhouse as far as the fun that they want to have in a game. I know it's the fun that I want to have. I've played it hundreds of times, and I still love playing it. And not just because it's my baby, but because I think it actually is a really good game. And I don't want to sound conceited. I'm in love with it, and I love playing it because it's so fun.
I think you're allowed to do that. I think if you're out there and you're putting something out there and you're proud of it, then you're perfectly entitled to kind of big it up. One of the other things I've kind of impressed with is that you've not gone for the let's pile this bad boy above $100 to kind of get in the door. And the reason for that was I had an old man rant on Twitter the other day just saying that I
saw it.
Seeing above $100 on Twitter just kind of is a potential example of why, we've got to look at making the hobby as accessible as possible. And for some people, $100 is nothing. To be honest, probably at the moment, $100 is a lot to kind of most people. And you've kind of come in at the kind of the $70 kind of mark. And was that a conscious decision? Was that based on you're just not trying to pile the thing up with bling to raise the price? Was it?
Okay, so Clayton and I had very little to do with any of the pricing.
Right.
So those would be questions that Nathan could speak to a whole lot better, and Molly could speak to a whole lot better, because they run the numbers, and they know what they're doing. I do know, though, that a lot of the choices that were made, are made to try and make the entry level, not as high as it could have been made.
Yeah.
And for instance, there was someone who recently in the comments on the Kickstarter said, boy, it would be really great if this had poker chip pieces. And Nathan sort of explained, we looked into poker chip pieces, but they would have been so much more expensive than the heat transfer plastic we went with. And that would have been way more per game, and that cost would have to go to the consumer. Nathan has also written a few pieces on a blog that he does that's at pandasaurus.com. And you can see, and he's talked about some of the rising costs of making games and selling games and how Pandasaurus approaches that. And it's another one of those moments where we're really glad to be working with Pandasaurus, because we feel like we're with a publisher who is sensitive to the economic realities of the games we're making. Now, our game has a ton in the box. Okay, there are lots of pieces. There are a lot of resources. There's a lot. I mean, part of what you're doing is building these buildings that each one of them has their own tile, and there's just a lot going on. And so this game could have been made a lot more expensive. And they were very conscious to use high quality, but also at the same time keep the pricing, I think, as accessible as they could have for a game of this size.
Yeah, and again, I mean, this will be lessons learned on the production of kind of like the various versions of Dinosaur Island as well.
Right.
And Wasteland Delivery Express, service that, they'll have learned those kind of lessons. I mean, you've got the $70 entry level, and then if you do want to go up, you've got like a deluxe version, which is just over the hundreds, 115 kind of dollars. But again, you get mission patch upgrades, you get metal coins. It's the kind of the person that does kind of want to go for the kind of their bling. How many post-it notes have you got left that have still got stretch goals ideas on them, Adam?
We have.
Are you running out?
We have quite a few. And, of course, some of the stretch goals that people are seeing, new art on some of the cards. Some of the cards were generic, and just showed like a space helmet. And they've unlocked some new art for those pieces. And so anything that Jesse does always looks better, when he does it. And so those are coming together really nicely. But, there are other countries that we're hoping to unlock. And I really can't wait till people get to see those. And it just adds more variability to the game, more opportunity for players to say, oh, I see myself in this game, and we want people from all around the world to be able to feel like they can play this game, and feel like they're finding something of themselves in it. And they can relate to that. But there's that. We've got a few other tricks up our sleeve, as well as some content that we're not doing stretch goals with, but some other things that, we've worked on. Clayton and I have developed a solo mode, for the game. Cool. And so some people love solo gaming. But we're going, instead of like trying to change what's in the box, because that changes all kinds of cost, and that changes shipping, and that changes things that folks have not signed up for when they bought in on the Kickstarter. And so rather than affect that, we're probably going to release that through BGG as a P&P module. The print and play module, so that we don't have to add any more cost to the game, but people can have that experience if they want to have it. Clayton is huge into solo gaming, and so he was really excited for us to work on that solo mode. So we keep feeding content, and we've got some other stretch goals, and I feel pretty confident that we're going to hit most of those. And that'll be super fun. We're not yet to the emergency place where we're like, hey, make stuff up, because they keep knocking out these stretch goals too fast. But hopefully, but you know what? That wouldn't be the worst problem.
Oh, that'd be a nice problem to have. Yeah. I mean, I can only wish you the very, very best of luck with the rest of the campaign. I mean, the game's, as I say, piqued my interest because it kind of ticks an awful lot of boxes in my kind of particular wheelhouse. if people have listened along tonight and they are wanting to keep an eye on your bad self, where can we find you on the internet webs, Mr. Hill? Soon to be doctor.
Yeah, hey, thanks. Everyone will have to call me that for like 3 days, and then it will go away from that.
Exactly.
But no, if they want to find me, I'm on Twitter at Adam Hill Games. You can also go to adamhillgames.com and see kind of my design portfolio and some of the projects that I'm working on. I try to keep that fairly updated, at least every month or so. I try to do something to kind of show where things are at. Clayton, you can find him online at Clayton Hargrave.
Yes.
And, we're both out there and we both spend a lot of time on Twitter. So look forward to seeing everyone.
Awesome. As I say, we'll make sure we put all the links in the show notes, so we've got notes to show. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, and thank you if you are listening to us for the first time, and if you're listening to us for the 300th time, I just go outside and do something else, for goodness sake. But keep on listening, but try and get outside. You can catch us in all the different worn out places, worn out faces. We're on Twitter and we're on Instagram and we're on Facebook, and we've got our website. And we've got our blog, which is we'renotwizards.blogspot.com, which has a write-up of Guardian's Call and what we think about it. You can also catch us on all the podcast catchers of choice. Some of them have got the word pod in them, some of them have got the word cast in them. Some of them, like Spreaker, they've got none, or neither, because they're just being difficult. If you like us very much, though, tell somebody else, because that is how we spread like some kind of annoying itch. That you don't want to stand next to somebody in an elevator. Or the other thing is you can jump onto Apple Podcasts and you can drop us a subscription, a rating, or a review. If you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, don't give us 10 stars, because it makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1 star, because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average. And we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight is a rather wonderful, rather fantastic Mr. Adam Hill. Thank you very much, sir, for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Excellent. There is only 2 more things to do. I'm dreading asking this next question. Is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Adam?
Oh no, we are most definitely alpaca in space. But we are not wizards.
We're furry and we like to spit.
Absolutely.
That's what he's trying to say. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Adam. Say goodbye, Adam.
Goodbye. Thanks so much.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, make something awful. But until the next time, I don't know, Godspeed to you all.
Godspeed.
Make it show number 1.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.